FM News Talk 97.1.
On-demand audio.
From United for Missouri. Carl, how are you?
I'm doing well, Mark. How about you?
I'm doing great, thank you. Glad you were available this afternoon, and happy 4th of July to you.
Yeah, the same to you. Independence Day, we should appreciate it more. And I know those videos you've been showing and some of those others, and sometimes it just makes you shake your head so hard you get a headache.
That's the truth. That is absolutely the truth. So you put out this scorecard every year, I guess, at the end of the legislative session. We've had enough time to tally up the scores. What are you looking for here? What's the goal of United for Missouri as you rate our politicians in Missouri?
Well, United for Missouri concentrates on fiscal issues and limited government issues. We don't do social issues and some of the others. So very specific areas. And what we do after the legislature is over, we sit down, we look at the bills that fall into those categories. We can't rate them all, so we choose, for example, we chose 12 in the House, and we rate those. And we don't know how the people voted, so we don't choose them to make someone look good or look bad. It just is what it is. And when we get done, we weight those. For example, we gave the Medicaid expansion vote a heavier weight than we did the beer cooler vote, for example.
Right.
And you can go to unitedformissouri.org and see all these details and the descriptions there.
Well, I hope people do that because they can you can go in and look up your legislator, whoever that happens to be. You can look it up by your Senate district, by their last name. Certainly, there are enough House representatives out there that we can't go through them all, but maybe you can kind of explain for us, Carl. I mean, if somebody's batting 100, we know what that means. But what if they're hovering in the 60s somewhere? What is that telling us about that legislator?
It says that they're not doing very good on a fiscal responsibility, limited government viewpoint.
Okay.
And so we have, for example, the lowest Republican score on there is like a 64%. So we have a few Republicans, a couple of Republicans probably in the 60s. We have, 4 mainly from this area, the St. Louis area, greater St. Louis at 100%. So they're all over the place. But again, you can look at unitedformissouri.org, look at the details of the specific bills we did, and make your own judgments. Yeah,
and it's interesting, and I'll just point this out. With people who have an R before their name, all of them have ranked higher than any of the Democrats who clearly we know want bigger government and more spending. I mean, you can pretty much accept that. And this scorecard bears that out. The lower half of the scorecard, anybody below a 64, the lowest Republican score is a 64%, almost 65. The next highest Democrat score is a 38. So it kind of draws the compare and contrast there. I mean, the lowest Republican score is not quite double what the highest Democrat score is.
Right. And again, it's not a partisan issue, but it is a difference in the two parties' philosophy of limited government and fiscal responsibility. We wish more Republicans paid more attention to it, but even at the lowest, they're doing a better job than the Democrats.
Yeah, and I'll just tell you, I mean, only 2 Republicans scored in the 60th percentile. One was a guy named Representative Nick King from House District 17. I'm not even quite sure where that is, so I'll assume it's outstate somewhere.
Liberty area.
Liberty? Okay. Mm-hmm. And with a 68% was Ann Zare from the 65th District out in St. Charles County, who's running for the state Senate right now. So, and then every other Republican was 70% or higher. So those are the only two that rated into the 60s.
Right, and the details, again, are put out there so that you can look around. And what we do is present this. This is what our viewpoint is. These are the bills we did. And what we would hope people would do is look at those and say, oh, I'm glad that my representative scored this, or I wonder what was really part of their thinking.
Right.
Pick up the phone, call them. I mean, that's what they're about.
Yeah, that's kind of what you're after. What are the biggest issues facing Missouri taxpayers right now, in your opinion?
Well, coming up in 2017, we're supposed to start a tax cut, 0.5%, over 5 years. And as the numbers are coming out, it looks like Governor Nixon's been playing a little games with the revenues to try to stop that tax cut. So we're going to be looking at that. One of the most important things coming up, because session's over, they can't pass any more bills, but they do have a veto session coming up in September.
Right.
The governor just vetoed voter ID, or about to veto voter ID, And that's a very important issue, I think, when we talk about the integrity of our elections. So we'll be looking at that again in September.
So he's threatened a veto on voter ID?
He has done it in the past, and I haven't heard any reason that he's expressed why he would sign this one. So it's traditionally not something that he's supported, and I would expect that he would also dump this one.
Well, I mean, I know you guys don't deal a lot with a lot of things that aren't fiscal issues, but on that one in particular, the bill that finally came out was so watered down. I mean, you can still show up and vote without an ID. You just have to vote provisionally till they can go back and confirm that you are who you said you are.
Right. And so, they've made the compromises trying to make it so that people could vote for it. They lost, still didn't gain everybody they needed to gain. But there'll be two measures. What people need to understand is there are two measures that were passed, and we rated both of those on our scorecard. They can look it up at unitedformissouri.org, and they'll see that there's a constitutional amendment that they will vote on in November that will put the requirement for that in our Constitution.
Right.
And the second bill that they passed is how you actually would implement that. So people can go to the poll knowing how it would be implemented based on the bill they passed. And that's probably the one that the governor can't touch, the one on the ballot, but he can veto the one that they passed of implementation, and I suspect they will be taking that up again in September.
It's all about education. You can go to the unitedformissouri.org, and you can read up on more of some of these issues. That tobacco tax didn't get close to passing, did it?
No, it never made it, up. Well, it made it up on the Senate floor for discussion, but it never made it up for a vote. And that was an obvious attempt by big tobacco to force a tax on their smaller competitors, and it was just the wrong way to go. Unfortunately, the Senate recognized that, and they weren't in the mood for voting on it.
That's good. Get on there. Just see how your representative did. I mean, a lot of these Republicans are there's a lot of them in the 90th percentile up here, but there are some that were voting down there close to the Democrats. You need to pay attention to that as well. Carl Bearden, it's always a pleasure, and I hope you have a great holiday weekend.
You too, Mark. Thanks. I appreciate it anytime.